This is EconWorks. In this episode, we unpack why traditional antitrust tools struggle with platforms and introduce a new way to think about them. From credit cards to Google to sports leagues, not all platforms work the same way, and that distinction matters more than you think.
Usually, when we think about rules, whether it's in a sport or, in business, there's this inherent expectation of really clear boundaries.
Right, like you need to know where the edge of the playing field is.
Exactly. Picture a soccer field. You've got those bright white lines painted on the green grass. If a player steps out of bounds, the referee blows the whistle.
It's clean. It's binary.
It is. And most importantly, the referee is just an impartial observer, right? Their only job is to enforce the rule book, not to, play the game or own the stadium.
Yeah, and we rely entirely on that clarity. I mean, the assumption that the referee and the playing field are just neutral infrastructure is basically the foundation of how we understand fair competition.
But what happens when you step into the modern digital economy and suddenly that soccer field starts literally shifting under your feet?
That is where things get messy.
Right. Imagine if the referee doesn't just enforce the rules, but actually owns the field, sells the television rights, and, decides which players are even allowed to buy a pair of cleats.
Well, that is the breaking point for our traditional rule books. When the entity enforcing the rules is also dictating who gets to participate in the market at all, the tools we use to ensure fair play just completely fall apart.
And this isn't some distant dystopian hypothetical?
Oh, not at all. It is the reality of how the biggest systems in our world operate today.
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for you on today's deep dive. We are exploring a really brilliant set of insights from a blog post and some infographics by EconWorks.
Yeah, it's titled When the Platform IS the Market, and it's fascinating.
It really is. So we're going to figure out why the traditional rules for monopolies and fair competition, the antitrust laws that are, designed to protect every single one of us, are fundamentally failing in a world driven by these complex platforms.
And to grasp why those rules are breaking down, we really have to establish how those rules were built in the first place.
Right. Start from the foundation.
Exactly. We need to look at how traditional antitrust law defines a market. Because legally speaking, if you can't define the physical boundaries of a market, you can't prove that someone is monopolizing it.
Right. And historically, traditional economics relies on this very intuitive question, which is basically, what alternatives do you, the customer, actually have?
Yeah, the technical term for that is consumer substitution. So think about your morning routine.
Okay, I'm thinking about it. Lots of coffee.
Right. Let's say you buy a specific brand of coffee beans every week. If the price of those beans suddenly, doubles overnight, how do you react?
Oh, I'd probably just switch to a different brand. Or, I don't know, switch to tea or energy drinks if all coffee got that expensive.
Exactly. That ability to walk away and substitute one product for another is how economists and antitrust lawyers draw a circle around a market. They're just measuring the limits of what a consumer will tolerate before going elsewhere.
Okay, let's unpack this because they actually have this very specific, almost mathematical thought experiment for this, right?
Yeah, they do. It's called the SSNIP test.
Wait, SSNIP? Like SSNIP?
That's the one. It stands for a hypothetical monopolist imposing a small but significant non-transitory increase in price.
Wow, that is a mouthful.
It is, but it's basically the cornerstone of traditional antitrust law. So imagine a hypothetical scenario where one massive company manages to buy up every single coffee brand in your town.
Okay, a total coffee monopoly.
Right. And the government wants to know if coffee is its own distinct market. So they apply this test. They ask if this hypothetical monopolist raised the price of all coffee by just 5%, a small but significant increase, and kept it there, what would happen?
So they're asking, would enough people ditch coffee entirely and switch to tea to make that 5% price hike unprofitable for the company?
Precisely. If a 5% hike makes everyone flee to tea, then coffee doesn't exist in a vacuum. It means coffee and tea are actually in the same market competing against each other.
But if people just grumble and pay the higher price anyway?
Then coffee is its own distinct, isolated market.
In a traditional physical economy, that makes perfect sense. If a grocery store makes apples absurdly expensive, you just buy oranges. It's simple, direct substitution.
Yeah, a one-to-one swap.
But here's where we hit a massive speed bump with the EconWorks piece. Platforms do not operate like grocery stores selling apples to a single buyer.
No, they absolutely do not. They are multi-sided ecosystems. Like a newspaper connects readers and advertisers. A gaming console connects players and software developers.
It's like, well, think of it like a matchmaking party. Imagine you're running a giant singles mixer. You've got two groups, men and women.
Okay.
If the organizers suddenly quadruple the cover charge for the men, traditional economics would just look at the men and say, hey, will they substitute this party for a different one?
Right, they just look at the one side.
Exactly. And sure, some men might leave, but the traditional test completely misses the absolute catastrophe that happens next.
Because the women react too.
Yes. The women who got in for free look around, see the party's completely empty, and they leave too. The traditional model just doesn't account for that.
It's a huge blind spot. And this phenomenon is known as indirect network effects. A change on one side of a platform like quadrupling a cover charge, it doesn't stay isolated.
It ripples.
Exactly. It creates a ripple effect across the entire ecosystem. The value of the party to the women wasn't the music or the drinks. The value was the presence of the men.
And EconWorks highlights how this plays out in the real world constantly. Think about your credit card. More merchants choosing to accept a specific card makes that payment network infinitely more valuable to you, the cardholder.
Yeah, and more readers flocking to a digital media platform makes that platform inherently more valuable to advertisers trying to sell you things.
So applying a tool like the SSNIP test to these multi-sided ecosystems is, it's kind of like trying to measure the volume of an ocean using a ruler, isn't it?
That's a great way to put it. The test was designed for simple one-sided markets. When courts try to apply a unilateral price hike test to a complex platform, they only look at one side of the equation.
And they completely miss the fundamental economic reality of the business.
Entirely. But, we established that platforms break the old rules, but the situation in our legal system right now is actually much more chaotic than just that.
Wait, chaotic how?
Well, courts and antitrust lawyers are currently trying to force all platforms into a single, unified analytical box. They basically treat every multi-sided ecosystem as if it operates under the exact same mechanics.
Oh, I see. So they're treating a credit card company the same way they treat a social media site.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is a catastrophic error in legal doctrine. Not all platforms are created equal. The economic mechanics driving a credit card network are wildly different from the mechanics driving a search engine.
Right. The source actually breaks these down into distinct categories, doesn't it? Starting with the one the legal system actually understands somewhat well.
Yeah. Category 1. The transactional platform.
So this would be your American Express card, or eBay, or Uber.
Exactly. The defining characteristic of a transactional platform is that it exists to facilitate a single, simultaneous exchange between two distinct sides.
Like a buyer and a seller meeting at a single, precise point in time.
Right. When you get out of an Uber, the app simultaneously charges your digital wallet and credits the driver's account. The platform literally is the transaction.
And its value is derived purely from the volume of those simultaneous exchanges, right? The more rides happening, the more transaction fees the platform collects.
Spot on. And the Supreme Court actually tackled this a few years ago in a major antitrust case involving American Express.
And surprisingly, they actually got the economics mostly right in that specific instance, didn't they?
They did, yeah. The court recognized that American Express sets its pricing across both sides of the platform as a single integrated product. Amex charges merchants relatively high fees, but then uses that money to give cardholders lucrative rewards.
Which encourages the cardholders to spend more at the merchants. It's a loop.
Exactly. If a court tried to separate the merchant side from the cardholder side and analyze them independently, it would just look like Amex was price gouging merchants.
But the Supreme Court said, no, you have to look at the simultaneous transaction as a unified whole.
Right. They understood the simultaneous nature of it.
Okay, that logic holds up beautifully if you're evaluating a credit card. But wait, how on earth does that logic apply to something like a Google search or a Facebook feed?
It doesn't.
Right, because if I search for a chocolate chip cookie recipe online, there is absolutely no simultaneous transaction happening between me and the bakery showing up in the sponsored ads.
What's fascinating here is that you've just identified the exact trap that current antitrust litigation is falling into. You were describing the second category of platforms.
The non-transactional or process platform.
Yes. Google search, Facebook, Amazon's ad network. These are not simultaneous exchanges at all.
So if it's not a single handshake between two people, what is it?
It's a sequence. It's a chain of interactions unfolding over time. When you search for that recipe, you are interacting with Google's consumer-facing interface.
And Google collects data from that interaction.
Exactly. Then, milliseconds later, On a completely different side of the platform, advertisers are bidding in a real-time auction for your attention. Then, intermediaries place the winning ad onto a publisher's website.
Okay, so the platform isn't just a meeting point. It is an assembly line coordinating a highly complex process.
Yes, a process over time.
Which means the value isn't just a fee slapped onto a single swipe. The value is the accumulation of data and the orchestration of advertising over time. So if antitrust lawyers try to force a single market definition onto a process platform like Google, treating it like a simultaneous swipe of an Amex card, doesn't that completely obscure how the business actually makes its money?
It entirely obscures it. If a lawyer walks into a courtroom and tries to evaluate an assembly line by pretending it's a handshake, the resulting legal analysis might sound logical to a judge, but it will be entirely divorced from economic reality.
It is wild that the law can operate in this bubble of internal logic while completely ignoring how a business actually functions.
It really is. But we still haven't reached the most dangerous blind spot in all of this.
Oh, right. Because there is a third category of platform out there, one that operates with so much power, the current legal doctrine basically pretends it doesn't even exist.
Yes, the missing link in antitrust doctrine. Regulatory platforms.
Okay, so forget credit cards and search bars. Let's picture a massive pyramid surrounded by a giant brick wall. The only way in is through a heavy iron gate. And standing in front of that gate is a referee holding the only key.
That is a perfect visualization. Regulatory platforms do not exist primarily to match buyers and sellers. They are gatekeepers.
They control the access.
Exactly. Their defining feature is that they control access to the entire system itself.
We're talking about major governing bodies here, right? Like sports leagues are the perfect example from the source. FIFA on a global scale, the NFL, Major League Soccer.
Yeah, let's examine what a governing body actually does. The U.S. Soccer Federation doesn't just sell tickets to a game. They determine who is legally recognized as a professional team.
They dictate the standards for stadiums, the financial requirements for owners, the rules of play.
Right. They structure the competition on all sides of the platform for the athletes, the corporate sponsors, the broadcasters, and the fans.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. In those first two categories, the Ubers and the Googles, the platform, was essentially running the marketplace. They built the stalls and facilitated the trades.
True.
But a regulatory platform is different. They aren't just running the market. They are the mayor of the town. They build the city walls, they lock the gates, and they hold the power to decide who is even allowed to set up a storefront to begin with.
And because of that, the central economic question shifts entirely. For a transactional platform like Uber, the question is pricing and matching. But for a regulatory platform like a sports league, the central economic question is who is granted the right to compete in the first place.
The platform doesn't facilitate the market. It literally defines it.
Exactly.
Wait, if they aren't making their money off volume and transaction fees like Uber or Amex, where does the massive billion-dollar value of a sports league actually come from?
It comes from broadcasting rights and sponsorships. And the network effects that drive those massive television contracts, they do not stem from volume. They stem from scarcity.
Scarcity, meaning the exclusivity of the product.
Think about the World Cup. Its value is astronomical because it only happens every 4 years, and only the absolute best teams qualify.
Right. If FIFA allowed thousands of random teams to declare themselves World Cup caliber and play every single weekend, the broadcasting rights for the actual elite tournament would just plummet.
Exactly. A regulatory body maintains its immense financial value by strictly limiting access to the top of the pyramid.
But antitrust law, with its obsession over the SSNIP test and consumer substitution, asking if you'll switch from coffee to tea, has absolutely no framework for this.
None whatsoever.
Like, how do you measure consumer substitution when the harm isn't a 5% price hike, but rather a governor rewriting the rule book to exclude a competitor?
You can't. You just can't. And we don't have to guess what happens when this theoretical mismatch enters a real courtroom either.
Right. The EconWorks piece highlights a defining legal battle that perfectly illustrates this failure.
Yes, the case of the North American Soccer League versus the U.S. Soccer Federation and Major League Soccer.
The NASL courtroom drama. Okay, let's put you, the listener, right in the jury box for this one. What exactly happened?
So the core of the dispute was about access and governance. The U.S. Soccer Federation, which acts as the national regulatory gatekeeper under FIFA, sets the standards for what constitutes a Division I top-tier professional league versus a Division II league.
And the NASL was a Division II league.
Right, and they wanted to compete at the top tier. They argued that the U.S. Soccer Federation unlawfully manipulated those sanctioning standards specifically to protect Major League Soccer from competition.
Basically to lock the NASL out. So the mayor of the town changed the zoning laws to ensure a rival business could never open its doors.
Exactly. The NASL sued, claiming this exclusionary conduct was an antitrust violation. But remember, when you file an antitrust lawsuit, the first thing the court forces you to do is to find the relevant market using traditional economic tools.
You have to prove substitution.
Yes, which means the NASL's lawyers had to stand in front of a jury and somehow apply that coffee versus tea logic to a sports governing body.
Which sounds like an impossible task. I mean, what is the consumer substitute for top-tier professional soccer sanctioning?
There isn't one. The U.S. Soccer Federation is the sole recognized gatekeeper. But when the case went to trial, the defense brilliantly utilized traditional antitrust doctrine to confuse the issue.
How so?
They pointed out that there are plenty of other entertainment options, plenty of other sports. And because the NASL couldn't neatly fit their grievance into the rigid substitution-based definition of a market, the jury rejected the plaintiff's proposed market definition entirely.
Wait, so the jury essentially said, you didn't draw a proper circle around the market, therefore we can't find a monopoly.
Yes, and the appellate court backed them up.
Wow. So from a strict orthodox legal perspective, the judges and the jury just followed the instructions they were given. The ruling was internally consistent with decades of antitrust case law.
But economically, it revealed a catastrophic gap in our legal system.
They evaluated a town mayor as if they were a grocery store. They looked at a regulatory gatekeeper that controls entry into the entire competitive ecosystem of American soccer and judged it using tools built for an Amex card.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the danger becomes glaringly obvious. When you force a regulatory platform into a transactional antitrust framework, the bad actor wins every time.
Because the problem wasn't simply that the lawyers defined the market poorly.
No, the problem was that the specific conduct being challenged, manipulating the rules of governance to starve a competitor of oxygen, simply does not compute within a legal system that is only looking for a 5% increase in price.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why should you care about a courtroom battle over who gets to play professional soccer?
Because the mechanics of that failure connect directly to the reality of the digital world you navigate every single day.
Exactly. It means that a massive corporation or a governing body can operate an incredibly unfair, exclusionary monopoly right out in the open. But because they are doing it through governance, by manipulating the rules of access and leveraging scarcity rather than just jacking up prices at the cash register, our legal system is entirely blind to it.
The tools in the antitrust toolbox are simply the wrong shape. When a platform acts as a governor, antitrust law has to pivot. It can no longer just look at price and output. It must scrutinize how the control over access is fundamentally shaping or destroying competition itself.
It's like trying to diagnose a computer virus using a thermometer.
Yeah.
You know, you are technically using a diagnostic tool, but you are measuring completely the wrong metric.
That's entirely it.
So whether you are swiping a credit card to buy a coffee, searching the web for a recipe, or sitting down to watch a soccer game, the invisible structures that govern those platforms are quietly dictating the reality of the market you exist in.
And this raises a really important question for all of us as we look beyond just sports. We've seen how a regulatory platform controls competition by leveraging scarcity and governance. But look at the devices sitting in our pockets.
Oh, right.
What happens when everyday digital ecosystems like the massive app stores that control access to millions of software developers, or the foundational infrastructure companies that route internet traffic, begin acting purely as regulatory gatekeepers?
Wow. If they decide to rewrite the rules to favor their own products and lock out a competitor, they aren't just winning a game, they are changing the shape of the field.
Exactly. If our current legal framework cannot even process the governance layer of a domestic soccer league, how will it possibly protect the future of global digital innovation when a tech titan decides to permanently lock the gate?
That is a chilling thought, and that is exactly the thought we want to leave you to mull over today. The referee doesn't just blow the whistle anymore, folks. They own the stadium, and they are writing the rule book as the game is being played. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for those invisible gates, and most importantly, keep diving deep into the knowledge that helps you see the field clearly. We will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at EconWorks, thanks for listening.